Some insist that love finds you at the very moment you're lost and lost again. But what if it were to come in a shape beyond your wildest imagination, in a place you never knew existed, and at a time you start questioning everything you ever knew? This is not merely a love story with desert hearts, 1985. This is a bold journey to self-discovery, love, and escape from societal constraints. A breakthrough in LGBTQ+ cinema, this film is one of the most breathtaking accounts of love set against a stifling age backdrop. Journey back with us through this timeless classic as we explain its emotional layers, fantastic cinematography, and performances that will last forever. Setting the scene. Running the year 1959, here is that world in which Vivian Bella, reserved and intelligent English professor coming from New York, subsists in. As a woman of the 30s, she is a raisin in a bottle. She is in Reno, Nevada, seeking a divorce from a long, meaningless marriage. The approximately 6 weeks of residency, seeking a divorce, oblige her to relocate to a rustic establishment owned by the kind but conservative Frances Parker. Little does she know this trip will change the course of her life in ways she can hardly fathom. Enter Cay Rivers, Frances' free-spirited, artistic, and unapologetically confident surrogate daughter. From the moment she steps inside, an unspoken tension ignites between them, charged with curiosity and attraction, albeit with an underlying attitude of rebellion against the era's fixed expectations, flickering memory of confusions and regrets. Deprived of the joys of her marriage, she stands at the edge of transformation. She does not seem to expect kindness from the desert. She is just here to meet the legal requirements to separate herself from a life she no longer recognizes. She has arrived more or less with nothing but a suitcase and a well-abiding profound sense of disquietude, a weight that clings to her like the dust of a desert. Vivien is staying at a guest ranch run down but warm, owned by a woman of substance and strength, Frances Parker. A woman who has seen heartbreak pass through her doors. Women, each with their own story of loss and longing, seeking a fresh start. The ranch is quiet and set against the stark beauty of the Nevada landscape. Life there moves at a different pace, feeling far removed from the outside, irrelevant, old world beyond. Vivien is an intellectual, deeply reflective and somewhat reserved, and her discomfort in the wide open spaces of Reno is instantly felt. She feels all this blank, for the blankness of the vast land resembles nothing in New York City. Sitting inside in the dusty air on a wide terrain, she feels small, insignificantly small in the big unknown. The silence of the ranch, its isolation, is claustrophobic. A man who was swallowed whole in a world he could not understand felt itself unable to withdraw. But under her discomfort, there is a dawning curiosity, an odd feeling that may be that this strange place has started to give her what she's been missing. It's something she may not even have known she was searching for. And just as she is beginning to settle into this routine of solitude, a force enters this realm, a whirlwind of energy and of life that sweeps her off her feet without her even trying. That force is Cay Rivers, Frances's adopted daughter, who has lived at the ranch for as long as anyone can remember. Cay is everything that Vivien is not free-spirited, confident, and unapologetically herself. She's a woman who leaps through the air and lands on every gaze in the room. Sharp wit, smattering gibberish with her laugh. Charm and aura make her the center of the conversation, a mystery to her companions. Hey Vivien experiences the shift in the air from the split second she sets eyes on Cay. Almost as if the world holds its breath while two very different women meet each other. Vivien, blunt and on the nervous side, eyeballs Cay from a more interested angle. Vivien thinks she has never seen anyone quite like that bold, lively woman with glistening eyes. A personality like Cay's is magnetic, intangible, and mostly what breathes in between human beings. she doesn't look like she has ever touched the earth, unnerved by life's friction. She sees past the cultured exterior and into the sorrow in the other's eyes, bringing with it the kind of delicacy one would likely not stand in her line. Even though she is so assured, with free abandon about life, in some way she is compelled by Vivien. There is something, maybe something again, which speaks of that. The pleasure lies beneath all of it, a kind of feeling that neither could have described, but both must have known thousands of others would deny. In the days that followed, the various tides of Vivian and Cay's developing friendship change, deepening. They soon find an unarticulated bond that draws them closer together. They are two opposed souls, now sharing one heart. Initially timid and defensive, Vivien begins to reveal her innermost self more than she ever has. The free-spirited Cay encourages Vivien to abandon fears in favor of living in the moment rather than dwelling on the past. She takes long walks with Vivien through the desert, teaching her to admire nature's beauty in simplicity. Bit by bit, Vivien starts seeing life in a different light. She finds the taste of living running in her blood again and begins to see parts of her which she had long sublimated underneath standards of the accepted decorum. But the relationship comes with a burden, for Vivien is a woman of society. The struggle between propriety or convention has defined her lifetime. A woman who conforms to the rules of civilization through and through, she now stands in a strange world at its brink, on the edge of something she cannot comprehend entirely. Cay, on the other hand, has never been bound by such customs. She is a woman of passion, a woman living in the moment, without hesitation or dalliance. For Cay, the world is simply a canvas onto which she intends to pour out all the colours of life. Vivien is, indeed, caught between two worlds, the orderly world of intellect and self-control, where she has lived all her life, and the world of Cay, with its promise of liberation, passion, emotionality, and spontaneity. She yearns to break from the fetters of propriety that have haunted her for so long, but she dreadfully stands still at her gate, frightened of what the admission of a break like that might cost her. The possibilities that Cay represents. Vivien feels the weight of fear and uncertainty press against her emerging desires, against an instinct to safely retreat to the life she has built. The choices she's made are brought front and centre in a moment when she both really sees herself for the first time, and now delve into where she'd been petrified to go before. Through it all, Cay remains a presence always willing to encourage Vivien to flee her safety net, to risk the very things which have established the state of Virginia she has inhabited for so long. The narrative rises to the nadir where Vivien stands, and with some additional momentum into a kind of transcendence which never looks back, where she is poised to give it a monumental twist-turn to her life up until these crucial moments when she recognizes that what she had before is no longer from love, real love, self, or discovery. In the end, it isn't the divorce either, or eviction notices that mark a tale. It's been about striving to become herself again in a universe currently that looks so hopelessly far-reaching from what she's ever understood. The time thrown in Reno, however brief, is that it's a turning point. It's a time where she finally sheds the skin of her past to my liking, emerging the woman she will eventually become. As the last of her days in Reno draw near, Vivien stands at the edge of the desert, staring far into the horizon. Framing the vision is the desert at sunset, a texture of warmth surrounding her. Sand and sky blend peacefully. For the very first time in ages, she feels a sense of peace, of closure, and how whole she is. This long-winded journey across Nevada finds transformation, and leaving the guest ranch behind, She knows she is no longer the woman who arrived in the desert all those weeks ago. She is someone refreshingly new, someone alive, herself, than she's ever been before. It will be the hum of the engine beneath her, continuing along the path toward another world. It's only the beginning of her long journey. Days pass with the ebb and flow of growing evidence of a shift in the relations between Cay and Vivien. A stab of interest has now developed into something far more complex, far more enticing. Cay, her poise complemented by her inherent charm, seems to cast an invisible fetter around Vivien, dragging her to her closeness. Yet flirtation is withdrawn enough that it causes action in all its exasperating nature within Vivien, reconsidering the calm, kind version of herself she had apparently managed to create in her life. Vivien tries hard to keep herself on an even keel. She is the disciplined woman who has spent years forging a stronghold against herself and her feelings. She has been conditioned by society to reprimand her feelings in public, to play by societal rules, to preserve her an image of professionalism and aloofness. She has worked too long and too hard in this way, and no one, least of all another vivacious whirlwind like Cay, can be allowed to ruin her fragile balance. Yet the more she pushes herself away from him, the more easily she finds it next to impossible to escape from his holding. It isn't just Cay's striking beauty alone that manages to attract anyone who lays their eyes on her. It's a very unique and free spirit Cay has in her gait, which defines her as carefree, suppressing any consideration of restraint, either from others or perhaps from herself. Although Vivien cannot help but sense the leap for more in between themselves, a longing, a desire, an ache for something larger than the life she has prepared for herself. They meet up much more frequently, and with each interaction, Vivien feels some lingering ominousness that is intangible. Every glance, every touch, and every word is a brushstroke on a canvas she never knew she was painting in with Cay. Such has been her attempt to set aside the growing feeling. Each passing day adds fuel to this flame. And thus comes that fateful night when Cay first invited Vivien to join her on a casino gambling spree. Out of initial worry about what that would spell for her, at the back of her mind, this is a realm far from her knowledge base, a high-stakes world of flashing lights and whispers. But it is in this space that something about her invitation, the way she looks at Vivien, makes it impossible for her to give her a negative response. This night feels electric with possibilities, energy from a place where anything and everything can happen, where the rules of the game change at the drop of a hat. As they walk through the glittering halls of the casino, Cay's presence draws everyone's attention in the room. She is a force of nature, charming and seductive without even trying, and every move she makes seems to belong to a dance of seduction. But it is the lingering glances that Cay gets at Vivien that has her somewhat wobbly. The stolen glances, the eye contact lasting longer than it should. Each one sends a bolt of heat shooting up through Vivien's chest. Doing her best to compose herself, Vivien has strong feelings of attraction for Cay, and it has become harder to deny it. The night turns when a man, bold and rude, begins to pursue Cay. He seems not to notice, or perhaps he genuinely does not care, that Cay has made it clear that she is uninterested. He pushes on. The continued attempts almost become a joke, consisting of quite substantial rejections. With each increasingly heavy-handed moment, something snaps inside Vivien. Without a thought for security, she shoves herself between the two of them. Usually this is not someone who opines this way. Vivien has always been the calm, unruffled one, but somehow this man's behaviour and Cay's vulnerability at this moment awaken a side of Vivien she did not know was even there. Amid her silent anger, while the man retreats, feeling like Vivien cannot contain the swell of emotions at that moment. She is shaken, heart racing in her chest, yet pride, or rather concern, or perhaps something more of a primal instinct, the first stirrings of something deeper. but she doesn't tell it yet. Cay seems affected too, but her mask doesn't show it too well. She gives Vivien a sly smile for breaking the awkwardness. But between the two girls, there is an unsaid understanding, a brief and shared moment of knowing which neither can falter on. And from that moment, their interactions are more intense. There's an unquiet exhilaration surrounded by electric moods that they cannot evade. Small little intimate moments now exist that Vivien cannot help but notice. Lakeside conversations under starlight, with waves that whisper gently on the shore and secrets softly shared. A spontaneous dance in the desert, illuminated in moonlight, their shadows joining in the embrace of rhythm as their bodies move in unity. But it is now, in these quiet and private moments, when Vivien starts to realize just what Cay means to her. The walls that she has so carefully built around herself, the walls of control and self-discipline, begin to break. She feels like a naked child in manifest fear and delight alike, but there is no turning back now. In the faint glow of Cay's cabin one night, something shifts between them. It's nothing big, it's merely the moment when their eyes connect, and neither of them look away. The touch that follows feels inevitable, an eruption eliciting some fire between them that is raw and primal. It's as though the sky had been building up to that one charged moment, some kind of electric charge that neither of them can deny anymore. The desire, always a whisper before, is now a roaring speculation that cannot be denied any longer. Yet, it is love above all, a love that grows with every passing second, with every shared glance, with every word spoken in intimate whispers. But love, they both know, is never without a price. Frances, the closest friend of Vivien, is outraged to discover the brotherly love between the two. Her feelings are not malice-born, but fear-based. Frances can see what Vivien refuses to accept. That Cay is a reckless heartbreaker, a wild spirit who burns bright, but leaves a trail of ruin in her wake. Frances cautions her friend that a woman who went through so much in building a life of stability and control does not belong within Cay's world, in which chaos and passion reign and emotions are often considered expendable. Vivien is severely compromised. The power of Frances's words lingers over her above her love for Cay. Is that such a momentous connection? She wonders if Frances is right. Probably this is but a moment to pass, and she will get all devastated and lost. But she cannot ignore the call of her heart. She knows firsthand, and she's not overly concerned with anything else apart from the truth. This love is deeply felt, powerful. Unknown scares her, but walking away was never an option for her. What began as an innocent flicker of desire is now a wild bonfire. At a crucial point in her life, Vivien is uncharacteristically torn between the comfort of the familiar and a wild, unknown love that lies on the other side. In the end, love has a way of calling to you, and regardless of what lay ahead, one thing is clear for Vivien: she will never be the same again. In a place like theirs, secrets never lie buried for long. Their intimate interludes, once stolen away with tranquil comfort, soon became the gossip of the town. Their whispers followed them wherever they went, stepping out to the pavement, close to the old cobbled streets, into the narrow alleys, and along with the rest at the old creaky church where each one came out to gather on Sunday mornings. Nowhere was immune to such judgmental community scrutiny. They soon turned those whispers into gaping stares, sidelong glances, and quiet hisses. The town where they had grown up, where everyone knew everyone's personal business, was now strange to Vivien. A peaceful life, only just ordinary now, seemed stuffy, oozing of 1,000 expectations that she might not meet. It was neither just stern glances. It was the very foundation on which everything she knew was crumbling. Her whole life had been one of fitting in, one in which it was safer within the known confines. But now, everything looked a lot more like foreign ground. Not so for Cay. She was one person who had never learned to hide who she was. She wore her heart on her sleeve, not knowing how tough of an audience the townsfolk would be. Her love for Vivien was unquestionable, protected against tongues, both the prettiest and ugliest, though she felt burdened with the weight. Each look, every passing comment stung, but she wasn't going to let this tear them apart, not without a fight. But Vivien, with her more cautious nature, felt the weight of the pressure building up within her. It was indeed some beautiful love between one another, but also dangerous. Real consequences were involved. The safety of her old life was slipping away, and she did not know how to grapple with the ripple effect that had begun. How would her family react? Her friends? The people who were her entire world? She wanted to run home to her life, which demanded nothing in return, no explanations, no defiance of societal expectations. So one night, she put her foot down. After hours of agonizing about what to do, Vivien decided that she needed the space. She could not think of facing the aftermath of their love, the fallout that would come. She could not handle the shame, the rejection, and the fearful thought that everything she had known might be swept away. Step back, she decided. Not Cay, wild and turbulent, bent on not letting her slip away so easily. Under the pale moonlight, in the stillness of an empty park in which they had once laughed and dreamed, Cay confronted her. "Vivien," she said in a strong but unsteady voice, "you can just walk away. You can leave if you want to. Just don't pretend none of this happened. Don't pretend you don't feel it, this thing between us, this love." Vivien's heart was clutched by painful hands. She could not deny it. There was truth in what Cay said, a truth that lived in every part of her, deep in the pit of her stomach, in the fluttering of her pulse, in the ache of her chest. She could no longer pretend. She could not pretend to let it go. But fear and uncertainty were powerful forces eating her from within. "I am not acting," Vivien whispered with quivering voice. "Then I don't know how it could work. How can we? Not in a town like this, with all the eyes watching and judging us. God, I don't think I'll survive it." Cay leaned one step nearer, never taking her eyes off Vivien. "You don't have to survive alone," she said softly. "But you have to choose. What we have, it's real, Vivien. And it's worth fighting for if you want to fight it with me." The words hung heavy in the air, their tension on the verge of breaking the delicate bond they had formed. Vivien closed her eyes again, trying to ward off the encroaching heaviness that had been building in her gut. She was standing on a crossroad before her. It was a kairos moment to choose. The town, the expectations and the fears of what was to come. It was all too much. How could she do it? How could she resign from a life she had built with difficulty, the same life that provided safety and security? And yet, Cay's words rang clear and loud in her mind. "You don't have to live through it alone." Vivien had never lived beyond the lines. It had been safe. But was that really living, or merely existing within the bounds and parameters set by someone else? This time, was she allowed to feel something real, something wild, something that belonged to her? Making the choice felt impossible, but the love she possessed for Cay, the pull between them, unbreakable, was not something to simply overlook. The next morning, the town was different. Every face in the buzzing crowd carried an air of knowing. What had happened? What had been said? It was so great gossip enlivened up the air around every corner and reached her in unexplainable and inescapable ways. The walls felt as if they were closing in on her, but she wasn't ready to go nowhere. Not yet. The railway station was alive with many souls, the buzz of life around her. The whistle called out that the train would be leaving shortly. Vivien stood on the platform with her heart racing in her chest, with every item she thought she would need, and convinced that this was the only way out. find herself by getting away from this small town's suffocating expectations and starting afresh on a much more distant shore. But the instant the train pulled into the station, it came to her with undivided clarity. Trouble at last arrived. A tremor in her hand, a hitch in her breath. She could feel the lump in her throat, but she just couldn't do it. Not like this. When the train doors opened, Vivian's gaze swept across the platform, her heart racing at a furious pace. And then there she was, Cay, on the far side of the platform from Vivien, staring back at her with burning eyes that made the surrounding world fade into the background. Nothing needed to be said. They both already knew. The decision was made. Vivien moved forward, her legs trembling but steady, heart racing in her chest. She reached Cay and in that stillness held out her trembling hand, for the very first time utterly vulnerable. This was too simple, she thought. That was more than a hand she offered. It was a promise of love, faith, and facing the unknown together. Tears flowed down Mariana's eyes. She was indeed done with thinking. She was in love. She loved herself and wanted a new beginning with Cay. Cay took Vivien's hand, steady and warm. The grip didn't falter, and no words were necessary. It had all been said and done in the space between them. She smiled as tears rolled down her cheeks. She had made her choice. She had chosen love. She had chosen herself and a new beginning. With the train now behind, they pulled away rather than continuing their journey. Vivien felt exactly as if this was where she was meant to be, with Cay, together, and in love after the long time. They didn't want approval from the world or validation from anyone else. What they had was theirs, and nothing could extinguish it. And as the sun began to set on the small town, it felt as though the weight of the world fell a little lighter and felt a little bit more bearable. They had each other, and that was enough. In a time when LGBTQ+ representation is incrementing far more than 50 years ago, Desert Hearts is yet another classic, one of many, marking a change in the landscape, clearing a path for dozens of films to dignifiedly and respectably navigate an LGBTQ+ love story. This is a testimony of how storytelling can turn a heart and change a mind, allowing those who have felt silenced to speak up. The legacy of Desert Hearts speaks of the importance of being true in love and life. In brief, the movie says, treat yourself right and feel courageous about the openness of your love. Don't allow this world to define your persona or your partner. Love, in the end, is unconditional, brave and unapologetic, and it is defining. What did you think about Desert Hearts? Drop us a line in the comments below. With that film that changed so much, what did it make you feel? What did we learn from the story of Vivian and Cay? We would love to hear your thoughts and reflections on this unforgettable, eternal love story. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and remain connected for more powerful movie recaps. Many more stories to share infused with inspiration, emotional depth, and the power of cinema. Thank you for joining us. And remember, at all times, love finds a way.